Hey, how are you today? Thanks for listening to the Life Reclamation Society podcast. I'm Sherry Trentini, and I'm so happy to be here with you today because I've had an interesting couple days in that I have realized that I've been doing some things differently that I didn't necessarily set out to do. And I've been looking at things a little bit differently that I didn't necessarily set out to do. But I wanted to share with you some of what's going on and see if maybe you've had this experience, or if this is something that maybe you could bring into your own life if it serves you. About a year ago, just over a year ago, I finally conceded to having a dog. Now, my two teenagers have been hounding me, and yes, the pun was intended, to get a pug puppy because that is something that they've wanted for a very long time. So in the interim, each Christmas, I'd make sure and get them gifts with, pug pajamas or pug this or pug that in order to defer or deter them from wanting an actual puppy. And what I learned about that is that I needed to, in order to make peace with the idea of having a puppy, I've never had a puppy before, I needed to be the one to change my mind, right? The girls had done their job of trying to convince me about doing, or, getting the puppy and how cute it would be and how much fun it would be and all that kind of good stuff. I, of course, as a mom, immediately went to the fact that, well, we have to potty train it. It's going to eat stuff. And, I like my furniture and, yeah, it's cute, but oh my gosh, all the work. And everybody talks about getting a puppy as being similar to having a newborn. And well, been there, done that. Not interested in having a newborn in the house again. So, and aside from the fact that I'm have seemed to have developed a pet allergy, a real one, not just because I didn't want to have a dog. So what I had to do is really look at it from their perspective. How would having a puppy or a dog bring value into our household? How would it add value into our lifestyle? And how does having a dog change? Now, I know that's very practical and that's very analytical, and I'm, trying to let go of the idea of, the cuteness and the fun and, play catch and go for walks and all those types of things. I really needed to look at it from a place of, how does it add value? Does it take away value? What's happening? If we're bringing something into the house, I need to have this sort of feeling that it's going to be an intrinsic part of the house, that everybody's going to participate, and that it'll add to our overall sense of well-being, and we'll figure out all the logistics of potty training and walks and all the rest of it. So my allergy was my biggest deterrent, because anybody who suffers from seasonal allergies and or pet allergies knows that it's not a lot of fun to be walking around sounding like you're talking in a scuba mask all the time because of the runny nose or the stuffy nose or the sneezing and the coughing and so on and so forth. So I did my part, and I thought I would seek out some help for my allergies overall, not focusing specifically on the dog, but to help alleviate some of my sensitivity to different seasonal things or pollens and different stuff, but also to the dog. And that was, of course, a big value add. I had been enduring and tolerating the difficulties that seasonal allergies bring forever. I would take my over-the-counter antihistamine and go from there, and just sort of push through the different cycles that our seasons bring, and cope, not thriving, but just coping and still going about my everyday business. So that was the first step, because I thought, well, I would see how that would be effective and how I would feel in order to, again, sort of introduce a known allergen into my house. Then I started doing my own research. I started looking at, what do you have to do with a dog, with a pug, especially if there's anything unique, because they are a unique breed. What are some of the things that we'll have to change or bring into our house? So, I did my practical research as to the cost of not only the dog itself, but the cost of bringing all the stuff in. And of course, not factoring in all those accessories of the squeaky toys and the fluffy toys and the treats and, all the regular stuff. So I surprised my girls and my family by keeping an eye on different sites online about availability for pugs. And so I told them, I premised this, that we were just going to look and just going to, get some information. And of course, in the back of my mind, I knew we were coming home with a pug. There was no question about that. However, I don't know, I was hoping that we would get there and we would see these little puppies and then decide, no, we can't take on the cute. It's too much for us. However, of course, even when I think back to the day when we walked into the home of the puppies, while there was so many oohs and ahs, and I got caught up in it too. And sure enough, there we are at the bank machine, taking out the money to go back and collect the pug of choice to bring home. And here we are, just over a year. And of course, now I can't even imagine our household without our puppy. And I can't imagine not having, the cute factor and the automatic, sort of love and attention that you get when you walk in the door, and, all of those types of things. Now it's become normal, and it became normal fairly quickly. Everybody has participated in this process. And of course, the dog adopted me as the main caregiver. So I've, created my own bond and quite enjoy. So that really set off that was a huge mindset shift, because I was vehemently opposed to getting a dog, no interest in taking care, picking up, and I wanted to save my footwear and save my furniture. However, in these 14 months that we've become a furry baby family, I also let go of that too, let go of my desire to have a fantastically clean floor with all of the hair that our lovely pug deposits on a daily basis, and never wearing black without having one of those sticky roller things to get the hair off. However, that being said, it really gave me an opportunity to also apply that same sort of mindset shift, sort of when you have a clear stance of where you are, and all of a sudden you decide to turn that around and just see things from a different perspective. And sometimes we're challenged to do that because we're so comfortable in where we are and how we feel about a certain thing. And, we have the backup or the evidence or the data that supports our wanting to feel and be in this particular mindset or this particular opinion. And so a couple months ago, I wrote a blog on my website about giving yourself an A+, right? So it's been a long time since I've been in a graded environment where I have received, A, B, C's, or D's. And I realize that, to a certain extent, letter grades are not as common as they once were, especially back in my day. However, the blog post was based on a book that I had read called The Art of Possibility by the Zanders. And that was one of the most compelling portions of the book that really did a big shift for me after I read that. And I even went through it a couple times. Basically, what the gist of it is that Benjamin Zander, he is a conductor, an orchestra conductor, and he was teaching at the university level, and what he would do is he would have his students start the year with a blank piece of paper, day one, first class, and he would ask them to write themselves a letter writing a letter to themselves explaining what it felt like to get an A in his class, right? So as I said in my blog post, we might have preconceived notions as to what an A student does and who an A student is. We might have preconceived ideas as to how they spend their time, what their motivation is, what their work ethic is, all the things that they might do, but also how they have to be in order to maintain that A. So on the first day of the class, everybody starts at the same, ground level. But if he is already gifting every student in the class an A, now it's their responsibility to maintain that, to do the work necessary in order to do that. So, and what a difference that would, my perception would be to be teaching a class where you have an entire classroom full of A students. How would that have been different for Mr. Zander or other teachers who take this as a, way to start the year and work throughout the year? There might be a lot different to already have given an A to each of those students and how he shows up and how he teaches and what his intention is and what his expectations are. So it works both ways. Also, from the student standpoint too, if there are A students, then they also hold the teacher in a level of regard because he is cultivating and nurturing and bringing that A out of the students themselves. So it's a really great sort of energy to be in that classroom, I would assume, because everybody is coming from a different place. Everybody is showing up as an A student. He's showing up as a teacher who's giving all of his class an A. So I asked myself the question and posed it in the blog too as to what would it be like to give yourself an A in something that maybe if you were to, give yourself a report card on some of the things that are happening in your life or how things are feeling in your life, would you give yourself an A? Maybe there's some D's, maybe there's a C, maybe a couple B pluses. But if there's a part of your life where you want to excel or you want to, feel more engaged or feel like you're winning, sometimes if we use that quantifiable scale of giving ourselves an A, we might be inspired to up-level our game a little bit. Now, that I think in itself, is a great way to start. How could you give yourself an A today? Where if at the end of the day you were to give yourself a report card, how would you grade yourself on how you showed up, what you accomplished or how you felt about the things that you accomplished. And it's not a matter of creating a big long list so that you can give yourself 20 A's as you check off your to-do list, but more of how you're showing up in your life. How are you showing up at your job? How are you showing up as a spouse or a partner? How are you showing up as a parent? How are you showing up as a child, as somebody's child? How are you showing up in your community with everybody that you are interacting with in the course of the day? So that might be an interesting game changer, mind shift changer, might open up some possibilities about where you could A, give yourself some more credit, and B, how you could maybe up level and show up a little bit differently. Now, I mentioned about child and, if you're a parent, sometimes it's possible that our kids can be showing up, bringing their A game, right? That they are engaged, they're doing their thing. If they were to give themselves a report card, self-assessment, they might be giving themselves an A, whereas as the parent, we have different, criteria, or we have more criteria. And so we might not be as generous, or we could possibly be handing out A's like, candy at Halloween, and maybe that's not allowing the child or your kid to, up level their game, that we're making it too easy. It's an easy A. So one of the things that I've also been playing with is I know that I've been marking a little hard. And that can happen sometimes when you have teenagers that, we're at different levels. We've got, as I said, different intentions. We're giving attention to different things, and therefore our, the bell curve may be a little bit imbalanced when it comes to, giving our daughter or our son the ability to grow and come into that A level. So one of the mind shifts that I've also done is, I don't know, it's pretty quick for me to judge, and that, they might be giving themselves an A, but I might be in the C plus or B minus area. But what about the criteria about how I'm showing up, right? How am I showing up as that parent? Am I bringing my A game, or am I just calling it in? Am I thinking this is basket weaving 101? Or how am I helping to nurture? How am I helping to create the space in order for them to own that A, be that A, and infuse their lives with that sort of A game or A grade? So what I noticed when I did some observation, I stepped out of my judgment role and decided to sit back and observe some of the criteria that I've been using. And when you're starting, fresh in a class, everybody, as I said, everybody's starting at the same level. But when you have history and you have historical data, you might make some assumptions. And those assumptions might weigh and sway you to be a little more less forgiving. And that right there is, I think, one of the biggest speed bumps that we might put in our own way and in others' way for receiving an A grade. That idea of starting fresh and allowing for a new set of criteria, or a fresh set of criteria as well, rather than using some of that old stuff that's happened in the past in order to, impact how we are observing what is happening in this moment. And we can get caught up in that. We can do that on ourselves. We can do that on other people, and not just kids, people we work with, or our bosses, or the community at large that we deal with. We have a set opinion about how things are going to be, what the experience is going to be, what our expectations are. And sometimes that doesn't allow for any movement, that doesn't allow for any change, or we don't recognize when, something has happened that is at a greater level, or is up-leveled, or is more uplifting than maybe what we have in the past. So what I am offering or inviting you to do is, take a page out of my playbook, and the moment that you feel that you're in judger mode, take a pause, take a couple deep breaths, and sort of sit back in your chair and give yourself a moment to sort of let go of, the gavel and judging on yourself or other people, or, any number of things. And how can we observe? How can we turn things around and look at things a little differently and a little more broadly, and see what, sort of clear our eyes and see what it is that we're not seeing, or what we have, sort of blinded ourselves to because we are focusing our attention on being heightened awareness on seeing things that we don't like, or that are not indicative of an A grade. So how is it possible that there are times that you could maybe forgive yourself for judging yourself and others perhaps a little harshly, and take a couple breaths and sort of start with a fresh page and see how you could observe the things that you have not noticed, how you could possibly see things differently, and what effect that would have on your overall quantification about how things are going in your life. I'm Sherry Trentini. This is the Life Reclamation Society podcast, and I'm so grateful that you've listened and or watched, and I will see you here next time. If you have any questions, pop over to my website, send me an email, or catch me on Facebook on my Facebook page of Sherry Trentini Creating Space. I'd love to connect and hear how things are going, or maybe I can even offer you a little tweak on how you can broaden your perspective and, see things differently and be a bit more forgiving about the criteria that you're using to quantify or grade yourself and others in your life. Thanks, and until next time.